The night was darker than usual, the streetlights flickering weakly against the thick mist that rolled in from the nearby hills. Elena Carter, a 24-year-old nursing student, tightened her coat around her body as she walked home from her evening shift at the diner. The air smelled damp, the distant rumble of thunder hinting at an approaching storm. She had taken this shortcut through Maplewood Lane 100 times before, an old, almost forgotten road lined with skeletal trees and decaying houses. Tonight, however, something felt off. The stillness was unnatural. Not a single chirp of a cricket, not a rustling of the leaves, just silence. Then she heard it. A low, wheezing cough, followed by a desperate, pained whimper. Elena stopped in her tracks, heart hammering. She scanned the darkness and spotted a figure slumped against a rusted lamppost at the end of the road. The flickering light cast eerie shadows over the hunched form. "Sir?" she called out, hesitantly stepping forward. The man was frail, his clothes tattered and drenched. His skin was sickly pale, almost gray, and his breath came in short, ragged gasps. His eyes, sunken and hollow, lifted to meet hers, and a shiver ran down her spine. Something about them was wrong, but she couldn't just leave him here. "Are you okay?" she asked, kneeling beside him. His lips trembled, and his voice came out in a whisper. Please, help me. I have nowhere to go." Elena hesitated. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, but her conscience wouldn't allow it. He was just an old man, frail, helpless. She offered her arm, helping him to his feet. "I'll take you to my place," she said. "It's not far." His bony fingers clutched her arm with surprising strength. "Thank you, child," he rasped. As they walked, the storm finally broke. Rain poured down in sheets, soaking them to the bone. Elena's apartment was only a few blocks away, and she was relieved when she finally unlocked the door and guided him inside. A stranger in the house. The moment she shut the door behind them, the atmosphere shifted. The air felt heavy, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. She turned to the old man, who stood in the dim light of her small living room. His wet clothes clung to his emaciated frame, his posture unnervingly stiff. "You can sit," she said, motioning to the couch. He didn't move. Instead, he stared at her, his dark, hollow eyes unblinking. A feeling of unease settled over her. Shaking it off, she hurried to the kitchen. "I'll get you some tea," she said over her shoulder. As the kettle whistled, she peeked back into the living room. The old man was still standing in the exact same position. A small chill crept up her spine. "Sir?" she called softly. Slowly, his head tilted to the side, his lips parting into a thin, unnatural smile. Elena's breath caught. For the first time, she noticed something truly unsettling. The rain had washed away the dirt from his hands and arms, revealing something dark beneath his fingernails, something red, blood. A growing fear. She forced herself to stay calm. Maybe he was injured. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. "You're hurt," she said, approaching cautiously. "Let me clean that up." The old man's smile vanished. His gaze darkened, and for the briefest moment, Elena swore she saw something moving beneath his skin, as if something was shifting inside him. "No need," he muttered. "It's not mine." Elena froze. The room felt colder. The soft ticking of the clock on the wall sounded unbearably loud. She took a slow step back. "Whose is it?" she asked. The old man's expression remained unreadable, his lips barely moving as he whispered, "You shouldn't have brought me here." A deafening thud echoed through the apartment, the sound of something heavy falling in the hallway. Elena's stomach dropped. She turned towards the noise, her pulse thundering in her ears. The hallway light flickered, casting shadows that seemed to stretch unnaturally across the walls. When she turned back, the old man was gone. The terror unfolds. Panic surged through her. How? The door was locked, the window shut. He couldn't have just vanished. A creak from the hallway sent her heart racing. Elena grabbed the nearest object, a kitchen knife, and stepped forward. The hallway stretched before her, the dim light barely illuminating the space. The air smelled strange now, like damp earth and something metallic. Her bedroom door was slightly ajar. Her breath caught as she noticed something on the floor, a wet footprint. Not hers, his. She pushed the door open, her grip tightening on the knife. Nothing. The room was empty. At first glance, then she saw it. A dark shape crouched in the far corner, its back pressed against the wall. The old man. Except, he wasn't an old man anymore. His body was unnaturally contorted, his limbs bending at impossible angles. His skin rippled, as if something inside him was struggling to break free. His head snapped up, and his eyes, once hollow and sunken, were now filled with something black and endless. Elena's breath hitched. He grinned, revealing rows of jagged, inhuman teeth. Then, in a voice that was not his own, he whispered, "You let me in." Elena's fingers trembled around the knife's handle as the thing in the corner shifted. It no longer resembled the frail old man she had helped. Its limbs stretched unnaturally, its face an eerie distortion of what it once was. "You let me in." The words slithered through the air, soaked in something unnatural. Elena's breath came in shallow gasps. She had to run. With a sudden burst of movement, the creature lurched forward. Its limbs moved too fast, too fluidly, like a spider skittering across a wall. Elena screamed and stumbled backward, slamming the door shut. She braced herself against it, her heart pounding. From the other side, she heard deep, guttural breathing. Then, a sound that made her stomach twist, nails scraping against the wood. Then, silence. Elena held her breath. She pressed her ear to the door, listening. Nothing. Shaking, she stepped back. Was it gone? Had it disappeared like before? She needed to get out. Now she turned toward her window, ready to climb down the fire escape, but froze. The old man's reflection was in the glass, except he wasn't in the room. His distorted face grinned back at her from the reflection, eyes filled with endless darkness. And then, slowly, he turned his head to face her, even though his body remained absent. A choked gasp escaped her lips. The lights flickered. The air turned frigid. Then the voice, right behind her. "You can't leave." Trapped in the nightmare. Elena spun around, slashing wildly with the knife. Nothing. Her breaths were ragged, her vision swimming with panic. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. The room felt wrong now, stretched and distorted. The walls seemed further away, the shadows darker, deeper. It was as if reality itself was shifting. She turned back to the window and froze. The reflection was wrong. It still showed her room, but she wasn't in it. Instead, he was. The old man, or whatever he was, stood motionless in her reflection, staring at her with that same unnerving grin. Then, without moving his lips, the words came again. "You let Mr." And Elena staggered back. Her mind screamed at her to move, to run, but where? The door. She lunged for it, yanking it open, only to step into complete darkness. Her apartment was gone. The hallway was gone. Everything was just black. The corridor of whispers. A suffocating silence pressed in around her. The air felt thick, as if she were wading through something unseen. Then, whispers. Dozens of them. They slithered through the darkness, coming from all around her. She let him in. She let him in. She let him in. The voices grew louder, overlapping in a horrifying chorus. Elena clamped her hands over her ears, but it did nothing to stop the sound. Then, a single raspy breath, right behind her. Elena spun around, knife raised. A figure loomed in the darkness. Not the old man, something worse. Its shape was shifting, constantly unraveling and reforming, as if reality itself refused to define it. It had no eyes, just endless pits of blackness. Then, it moved, fast, too fast. Elena screamed as the thing lunged, its form twisting and warping. She ran. She didn't know where she was going. There were no walls, no doors, just an endless void. But she kept running, ignoring the stabbing pain in her lungs, the icy tendrils of fear clawing at her mind. Somewhere in the distance, she saw it. A light. A door. She pushed herself harder, heart hammering. The whispers swirled around her, angry now, furious. You can't escape. You can't escape. You let him in. The door was so close now. With one final desperate push, she threw herself through it. A return to reality? Elena tumbled forward, hitting the cold, hard floor. For a moment, she just lay there, gasping. Then, sounds, familiar sounds. The soft hum of her refrigerator, the distant echo of car horns outside. She blinked. She was back in her apartment. Her bedroom door stood open. The hallway light flickered, casting a weak glow. Had it been a hallucination? A nightmare? She pushed herself up, her body trembling. The kitchen clock read 3:17 a.m. Everything seemed normal. Except the front door was wide open. A cold chill ran down her spine. She knew she had locked it. Slowly, she stepped toward it, gripping the knife in her trembling hands. She peeked outside. The hallway was empty. The air was still. And then, a whisper, right beside her ear. "I never left," Elena screamed.